Hello and welcome back to TPG Reviews. I'm going to be reviewing for you right now the second episode of American Crime Story, The Assassination of Versace. Now, this show is really going into a lot of detail about the life of Andrew Cunanan. Andrew was the man who murdered Versace, and it's really playing a lot of it through his mind. He had a lot of delusions in his mind, and he was also a pathological liar, as I mentioned in my last review. So let's talk a little bit about this episode. So it started off where you see Versace and his lover, who is played by Ricky Martin, going into a clinic, and Versace gets tested and discovers that he is HIV positive. They tell him there's a lot of good medications and things that he can take. So the next scene, you see him lying in bed, and he's very weak, and he's very sickly, and you actually think he's going to die, which at one point he was very sick with HIV. You see his sister Donatella, played by Penelope Cruz, and for some reason it slips my mind the guy that plays Versace, but I've done a lot of research this week and realized that these people really do look like him. This guy, I will put his name in the comments, in the captions above, but he looks just like Versace. It was really scary how much they really did make these people look like him. But anyway, back to the story, sorry. Donatella comes in and she talks to him for a minute, and she breaks down and kind of says, what am I going to do without you? What is Versace without you? And he says, you may have to find out, what it's going to be like because I'm sick and this, that, and the other. So she goes out into the hallway and she runs into Ricky Martin's character, whose name is Antonio. And Antonio was Versace's lover for 15 years. And he says, you really do hate me, don't you? And she basically talks to him about how, all the men that he had brought, because he was an escort at one point in his life, and all the men that he had brought into the her life, Versace's life and everything, that he didn't need to do that. Just because it was his world didn't mean that he needed to bring it into her brother's world. So the next scene you see Antonio ask Versace to marry him, and Versace says, you can say this to me in the morning, but you can't say it in the evening. It then flashes to Andrew Cunanan, who's driving a truck, and it says Florence, South Carolina, which is really weird because I'm from South Carolina. So he shows him pulling into a Walmart, and he goes in and he buys some things. He comes out and he changes the license plate of this truck to a South Carolina license plate. You see him driving and he's singing, and he drives into Miami. And this episode really covers a lot of his obsession and why he was so, his obsession with Versace. When he gets into Miami, they show him going into a really cheap rundown hotel on the beach, and he rents a room, and he tells the woman that he is a fashion student and he's from France because he has a fake ID, that he shows her a fake passport, tells her he's from Nice, and he is there, a fashion student, and he's there to speak to Versace. He wanted to talk to Versace. So he meets this guy outside of the apartment complex, the hotel, and they become fast friends, and he goes down to the beach, and he's talking to this guy about Versace and how he's met Versace, and he basically comes up and tells this big lie that Versace had asked him to marry him and that they had slept together and all this kind of stuff. So he then, you see him go to the beach, and this old man is watching him, and he basically tells his friend, hey, where we can score, and so they're looking basically for drugs. So he tells his friend, he's like, hang on, I got this, I'll get us some money, I'll share this 50-50 with you, you're my friend, I take care of my friends. So he goes over, he whispers something in the old man's ear, and they get up and they leave. The next scene, you see Versace breaking down on the beach, and he's crying about how he didn't want to be sick, and he was jealous of people for the first time in his life for being sick and all that kind of stuff. It then goes back to Andrew Cunanan, and you see him in the room with this old man, and he's finding out all this information that this man is worth billions of dollars and things. And the guy says, I can be submissive, and he says, oh, I'm glad. And you see him tie this guy up, and he takes this duct tape and puts it around his face. It's very, very frightening. And he basically, you think the man's going to suffocate. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to give away too many spoilers what happens, but basically, it just shows how sick he was and what was really going through his mind. He then goes and does drugs with his friend in a hotel room, and he happens to be walking out. They run out of drugs, so he says he's going to go get some more. And as he's going by, he walks by Versace's house, and he sees Versace, and he realizes he didn't have his gun, so he goes and gets his gun back in his hotel, puts it in his bag, and he basically stays there, stays outside of Versace's house and watches him, takes pictures of the house and everything. He becomes so totally obsessed with Versace. Then he goes to leave the apartment or hotel where he's staying, and the guy's like, where's my money? And he gives him the money, and he's like, we were friends, that's true, right? And he says, if anyone ever asks you, tell them we're not friends. And so it basically goes into that, and then it kind of goes into a little more detail in this one about what happened with Andrew Cunanan and where he was at that time. You then see him, Versace, leave his house with his lover, and they're going into the gay bars and they're dancing and things like that. And Andrew Cunanan is in a goes to a pawn shop and he pawns something to get money, and the lady, she kind of has this look on her face like she recognizes him, but she doesn't. So while Versace's out, you see Andrew Cunanan in a store, in a sandwich shop, and he orders a tuna fish sandwich. And the guy behind the register excuses himself, and he goes and he calls 911, and he's like, hey, that guy's here, that guy that was on America's Most Wanted. And as the police pull up, Andrew Cunanan makes an escape. So then at the end of it, you see him in a gay bar. He's at the same gay bar that Versace now, who has already left with his lover, who stops him in the middle of the street and is like, hey, will you marry me? And he said, I've now said it in the evening. And Versace just kind of smiles, and they kiss, and it goes on. And then you see Andrew Cunanan go into the bar, and he's dancing and seeing all these people on the floor, and he's looking around. And it doesn't really say if he realized that Versace was in that bar, if he was just in there. It didn't really go into detail about that, but basically what it did was, this guy walks up to him and goes, hi, what's your name? And he says, I'm Andrew. And he says, what do you do? And he said, I'm a serial killer. And the guy said, excuse me? He's like, no, I'm a banker. No, I'm a doctor. No, I'm a stock. And he just names off all these jobs. And finally he goes, I'm Andrew Cunanan. And it goes off. So that's basically where it ended. Now, I really enjoyed this. First of all, Darren Criss, who plays Andrew Cunanan, deserves, I hope, to win the Golden Globe or at least get nominated. He is so brilliant. And I've done a lot of work this week on looking up what they look like and everything, as I said earlier. And he looks so much like Andrew Cunanan. It's kind of frightening. So basically, his acting is superb. I think the acting overall of everybody is really good. I enjoyed the performances so much more this time than I did in the first one. But they're really, 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 Ryan Murphy's put together a lot of detail, really paid attention to a lot of detail with the clothing, the history, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very, very excited to see where episode 3 is going to go, which will be it's on Wednesday nights, y'all. I made a mistake. It's on Wednesday nights at 10 o'clock on FX. So the preview for next week looks really, really good. I think it's going to go into a little more depth because up to now, which is something I did leave out, the police are searching for Andrew Cunanan, and they're trying to do a big manhunt, and you find out that they've kind of dropped the bomb on putting out the wanted posters for him and everything like that. So basically, all of this is going on around him. The police are just kind of losing, dropping the ball on everything with Cunanan and everything, but the female police officer is really searching for him, and you find out he's wanted all over for the FBI for 4 murders. Versace made his 5th murder. So I think starting next week, it's really going to go into more detail of the people that he killed and what led up to these killings and what led up to Andrew Cunanan's obsession with Versace and his actually killing Versace and what his motive was. So my guys, thank you so much for watching this review. I hope that you enjoyed it. I tried not to give away too many spoilers. If I did, I'm sorry. I'll try to do better. If it bothers you, leave it in the comments. If not, I hope you enjoy it. If you're not watching this show, hopefully my review will catch you up a little bit on it. Thanks, guys. Remember, hating is a disease, and some folks need to get well soon. Bye.